In the heart of the sprawling evergreen woods, where towering trees whispered secrets to the wind and sunlight danced through leafy canopies, lived a young adventurer named Liam Carter. From the moment he could walk, Liam had felt an unexplainable pull toward the forest. As a child, he would spend hours playing beneath its trees, weaving fantastical stories of hidden kingdoms and magical creatures. His parents, both botanists, nurtured his curiosity, teaching him the names of plants and how to track animals through their prints. By the time Liam turned 12, he could identify every bird by its song and knew the secret places where wildflowers bloomed in brilliant hues. He spent countless afternoons lying on the soft, mossy ground, sketching trees, insects, and animals he encountered, all while dreaming of the adventures that lay beyond the village's borders. But his fascination with the forest went beyond its natural beauty. The evergreen woods were steeped in lore, and the villagers spoke in hushed tones about its enigmatic guardian, Sylva. Legend had it that Sylva, a magnificent lynx with fur like liquid silver and eyes that glowed like embers, was the protector of the woods. It was said Sylva appeared only in times of great need, guiding the lost and safeguarding the forest from harm. Stories told of poachers who ventured too far, only to return to the village pale and shaken, claiming they had been driven out by an unseen force. Others spoke of hunters who found themselves inexplicably surrounded by animals, their weapons rendered useless by the sheer weight of the forest's watchful gaze. There were whispers of ancient magic that coursed through the roots and rivers of the forest, and Sylva was believed to be its living embodiment. Elders would gather children around the fire, weaving tales of Sylva's heroics, how the lynx had driven away a marauding band of loggers, leaving their axes rusted and useless overnight, or how it had appeared to a lost traveler as a beacon, leading them home through the thick fog. Liam's favorite tale was that of a woodcutter's daughter who had been lost in a winter storm. According to the story, Sylva appeared to the girl, leading her to a hollow tree filled with warmth and light where she waited until the storm passed. Though the villagers recounted these tales with reverence, Liam, ever the budding scientist, dismissed them as fanciful exaggerations. Yet, on lonely nights, when the wind howled and shadows danced against his bedroom walls, he found himself wondering, what if Sylva was real? Legends are just stories people tell when they don't understand the world around them, he would say confidently, though a part of him secretly wished to see Sylva with his own eyes. One crisp autumn morning, as the forest was awash in fiery shades of orange and gold, Liam decided to embark on his most ambitious adventure yet. The air was cool and invigorating, carrying with it the faint scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. He packed provisions for the day, a loaf of bread, a hunk of cheese, and a flask of water, along with his compass, a detailed map, and a well-worn notebook. This time, he planned to chart an unexplored section of the woods, an area the villagers called the Veiled Glen. "Be careful, Liam," his mother said as he strapped on his sturdy boots. "The forest has a way of humbling even the most experienced wanderers." "I'll be fine, Mom," he replied with a reassuring grin. "I've got my map, my compass, and my wits. What could go wrong?" Setting off with a confident stride, Liam felt the familiar thrill of adventure coursing through him. The crunch of leaves beneath his boots and the distant chatter of birds created a symphony that was both soothing and invigorating. The forest seemed to welcome him at first, its golden canopy casting a warm glow over the winding paths. He stopped occasionally to sketch a peculiar mushroom or jot down notes about a flock of migrating birds. The deeper he ventured, however, the more the forest began to change. The trees grew taller, their trunks gnarled and ancient, and the underbrush thickened, making the path increasingly difficult to navigate. Birds flitted between branches, their songs unfamiliar, and the air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine. Liam paused to sketch a peculiar flower he'd never seen before, its petals a vivid indigo that seemed to shimmer in the dappled sunlight. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, carrying with it a faint, almost musical hum that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the woods. Hours passed, and Liam's excitement gave way to unease as he realized he had wandered far beyond familiar territory. His compass, once reliable, began to malfunction, the needles spinning aimlessly. The map he had meticulously prepared offered no guidance, and the landmarks he'd marked seemed to vanish into the dense greenery. The forest, which had always felt like a second home, now seemed vast and unyielding. Determined to find his way back, Liam retraced his steps, or so he thought. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the forest floor. Panic threatened to take hold, but he pushed it aside, reminding himself of the survival skills his parents had taught him. As darkness fell, he chose a small clearing to set up camp, gathering twigs and dry leaves to build a fire. The flames flickered weakly, offering little comfort against the encroaching night. Wrapped in his blanket, Liam stared into the fire, his thoughts racing. He had always prided himself on his resourcefulness, but now, faced with the forest's vastness, he felt small and vulnerable. Exhaustion eventually claimed him, and he drifted into a restless sleep, the sounds of the woods weaving into his dreams. When Liam awoke, the forest had changed once again. The fire had long since gone out, leaving behind faint wisps of smoke that curled into the crisp morning air. The once familiar sounds of birdsong were absent, replaced by an almost tangible stillness. He rubbed his eyes, feeling the weight of fatigue pressing down on him, and looked around, hoping to recognize some landmark that might guide him. It was then he noticed the paw prints. Large and unmistakably feline, they circled his makeshift camp as though a predator had been watching over him while he slept. His heart quickened. Could it be Sylva? He followed the prints cautiously, his pulse pounding in his ears. The tracks led deeper into the forest, through dense underbrush and across shallow streams that sparkled in the dappled sunlight. As Liam ventured further, he became aware of a strange sensation, a feeling that he was being guided rather than lost. The air seemed lighter, the path clearer, as though the forest itself had opened a door for him. Finally, he emerged into a small clearing, bathed in golden light. At its center stood a tree unlike any he had ever seen. Its trunk was silver, shimmering as though woven from moonlight, and its branches stretched high into the heavens, draped with leaves that glowed faintly. And there, beneath the tree, stood Sylva. The lynx was even more magnificent than the legends had described. Her fur shimmered like molten silver, and her amber eyes held an intelligence that sent a shiver down Liam's spine. For a moment they simply stared at each other, the air between them charged with unspoken understanding. Liam felt an overwhelming sense of awe and gratitude. He took a cautious step forward, but Sylva did not move. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as if beckoning him to follow. Without a word, Liam obeyed, feeling an inexplicable trust in the creature. As Sylva turned, her silver fur catching the sunlight like a living beacon, Liam followed her deeper into the heart of the forest. The air grew cooler, laced with a faint metallic tang that sent shivers down his spine. Shadows danced unpredictably across the path, and the trees seemed to lean closer, their branches forming an intricate canopy that dimmed the light. Sylva's movements were deliberate, her paws soundless on the mossy ground. She led him to a narrow trail that twisted through ancient trees, their trunks gnarled and covered in luminous moss. Liam struggled to keep up, his breathing labored as he dodged low-hanging vines and navigated uneven terrain. His boots crunched on the forest floor, a stark contrast to Sylva's ethereal silence. Then, the atmosphere shifted. A low hum began to vibrate through the ground, resonating in Liam's chest. It wasn't unpleasant, more like the deep, steady pulse of a heartbeat. Sylva stopped abruptly, her ears twitching. She turned to Liam, her glowing amber eyes locking onto his. The intensity of her gaze sent a clear message. Stay close. The two stepped into a vast clearing, its center dominated by a structure that seemed to grow out of the earth itself. It was both ancient and alive, a temple-like ruin, with crumbling stone walls entwined with roots and vines. The stone glowed faintly, pulsing in time with the hum that filled the air. Liam's breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight. "What is this place?" he whispered. Sylva padded forward, her posture cautious but unafraid. As Liam followed, he noticed carvings etched into the stone walls. Scenes of animals and humans living in harmony, overseen by a figure resembling Sylva. In one panel, the figure stood before a massive tree, its branches stretching far beyond the frame. In another, the tree was shown wounded, its trunk marred by deep cuts. The carvings told a story of balance disrupted, a great wrong inflicted upon the forest's heart. At the center of the ruin stood a pedestal, and on it rested a twisted, blackened branch. Liam's gaze was drawn to it, unable to look away. The branch exuded a faint, inky mist that writhed and pulsed as though alive. The moment Liam's fingers brushed against it, the world around him dissolved. He was plunged into a vision, vivid and overwhelming. He saw the forest as it had been centuries ago, vibrant, teeming with life, its air filled with the songs of birds and the rustle of leaves. But the peace was shattered by the arrival of cloaked figures wielding axes and torches. They spoke in a language Liam didn't recognize, their voices rhythmic and commanding. The figures approached a massive tree, its trunk glowing with a soft golden light. With each swing of their axes, the light dimmed, and the forest seemed to cry out in pain. From the tree flowed a dark, viscous liquid, staining the ground and spreading like a shadow. The figures took a branch from the tree and carved it into the object now resting before Liam. The vision shifted, showing Sylva, younger and smaller, watching helplessly from the shadows. She let out a mournful cry, rallying the animals of the forest. Together they drove the intruders away, but the damage had been done. The forest's balance was broken, its magic tainted by the curse that lingered in the blackened branch. Liam gasped as the vision ended, his knees buckling beneath him. He looked up at Sylva, who stood watching him, her eyes filled with sorrow and determination. "This is why you brought me here," he said, his voice trembling. "You need my help to fix this." Sylva stepped closer, her nose gently nudging his hand. Her gaze was steady, filled with an unspoken trust that bolstered Liam's resolve. Sylva led him away from the ruin, her pace quick and purposeful. The forest seemed to shift around them, the trees parting to reveal a narrow path that Liam hadn't noticed before. They climbed steep slopes, crossed crystal-clear streams, and passed through groves filled with flowers that glowed faintly in the twilight. At last, they arrived at a grove unlike any Liam had seen. In its center stood the heartwood tree, the same one he had seen in his vision. Though its trunk was still scarred, it radiated a gentle golden light. Its branches stretched skyward, draped with leaves that shimmered like liquid gold. Sylva approached the tree reverently, bowing her head. Liam followed suit, placing the cursed branch at the base of the tree. The air grew still, the hum returning, deeper and more resonant. The golden light of the tree enveloped the branch, its inky mist dissolving as the curse was drawn into the tree's healing energy. The forest responded immediately. The oppressive weight that had lingered lifted, replaced by a sense of renewal. Birds sang once more, and the trees seemed to sigh with relief. Liam sank to the ground, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just transpired. Sylva stepped closer, her head resting against his shoulder for a moment, a gesture of gratitude and kinship. "Thank you," Liam whispered, his voice thick with emotion. As they made their way back through the now luminous forest, Liam felt a profound change within himself. He had come seeking adventure but had found something far greater, a purpose intertwined with the magic and life of the forest he now vowed to protect. Sylva walked beside him, no longer a legend, but a companion in their shared duty to the evergreen woods. The golden light filtering through the forest canopy began to shift, dimming as Sylva and Liam continued their journey deeper into the woods. Liam felt a strange blend of wonder and unease. Sylva's calm yet purposeful stride suggested she was leading him somewhere significant. The air grew cooler, and the once vibrant sounds of the forest quieted, replaced by an almost eerie stillness. Then, Sylva stopped abruptly. Her silver fur rippled under the faint sunlight as she raised her head, ears twitching. Her amber eyes sharpened, scanning the shadows with an intensity that made Liam's skin prickle. "What is it, Sylva?" Liam asked in a hushed tone, instinctively lowering his voice. The lynx didn't answer, of course, but the low growl that rumbled from her throat was answer enough. Liam stood frozen, straining his ears. At first, he heard nothing but the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. Then, faint and distant, came a sound. A cry. "Help!" It was barely audible, carried by the breeze, but it was unmistakable. Someone was in trouble. "Did you hear that?" Liam whispered, glancing at Sylva. She was already moving, her lithe body weaving through the underbrush with alarming speed. "Wait! Sylva!" Liam called, scrambling to keep up. He clutched at low branches, his boots slipping on the damp forest floor. The cry for help grew louder, more desperate, as they pushed deeper into the dense shadowed thicket. They soon came upon a wide ravine, its rocky cliffs plunging steeply into an abyss shrouded in mist. Liam skidded to a halt at the edge, catching his breath. Across the chasm, on a precariously narrow ledge, clung a young woman. Her arms were wrapped around a brittle branch jutting out from the cliffside, her knuckles white from the strain. Her dark hair clung to her face, damp with sweat and streaked with dirt, and her wide, terrified eyes met Liam's. "Please help me," she cried, her voice hoarse and trembling. Liam's stomach dropped. The ledge beneath her feet crumbled slightly, sending loose rocks tumbling into the void below. She screamed, clinging tighter to the branch. "It's going to be okay," Liam shouted, though his voice wavered. He turned to Sylva, panic flashing in his eyes. "What do we do?" Sylva's gaze darted between the woman and the unstable ground. She paced the edge of the ravine, her ears flattened against her head, as though calculating the situation. Then, without hesitation, she bounded into the trees and disappeared. "Sylva, wait," Liam started, but she was already gone. The minutes stretched into an eternity as Liam searched frantically for something to help. He found no vines, no sturdy branches long enough to reach across the ravine. The woman's breathing grew ragged, her grip slipping. "Don't let go," Liam called. "Sylva's coming back, I promise." The woman's tear-streaked face twisted in despair. I can't hold on much longer." Liam's heart pounded as he stared into the chasm, feeling utterly powerless. Every second felt like an eternity, the weight of her life resting heavily on his shoulders. Just as Liam was about to lose hope, Sylva returned, dragging a thick vine in her jaws. Its length trailed behind her, its surface rough and sturdy, as though it had been plucked straight from the forest's heart. "Sylva, you're amazing," Liam exclaimed, relief washing over him. He grabbed the vine and quickly tied one end around the trunk of a nearby tree. With Sylva's guidance, He looped the other end into a secure knot and threw it across the ravine. The vine landed just within reach of the woman. She hesitated, her gaze darting between the vine and the abyss below. "You can do this," Liam shouted, his voice steady and encouraging. "Just grab it and climb." Sylva let out a sharp bark-like yowl, as if adding her own encouragement. The woman swallowed hard, then released one hand from the branch to grasp the vine. The movement caused the ledge to crack ominously, sending more debris tumbling into the misty depths. "Hold on!" Liam yelled, gripping the vine as tightly as he could. The woman began her slow, arduous climb, her muscles trembling with effort. Halfway up, the cliffside groaned under the strain, and the branch she had been clinging to broke away completely. She let out a scream, dangling now by the vine alone. "Pull!" Liam shouted, bracing his feet against the ground. Sylva sprang into action, planting her powerful legs and gripping the vine with her teeth. Together, boy and lynx heaved, inching the woman upward despite the weight and tension. The air was thick with the sound of labored breathing and the creak of the vine. Liam's arms burned, his fingers raw, but he didn't let go. Sylva's growls of exertion urged him on. Finally, with one last heave, the woman reached the edge and tumbled onto solid ground. She lay there gasping, her chest heaving with relief. Liam collapsed beside her, his limbs trembling with exhaustion. "You did it," he panted, looking over at Sylva. The lynx was already standing tall, her fur shimmering in the fading light as if untouched by the ordeal. The woman, who introduced herself as Elena, struggled to her feet. Her voice was shaky but filled with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her gaze darting between Liam and Sylva. "I thought I was going to die out there." "What were you doing so deep in the forest?" Liam asked, his curiosity outweighing his exhaustion. "I'm a botanist," Elena explained, brushing dirt from her torn clothes. "I was searching for rare plants when I got separated from my team. Then I slipped and... well, you saw the rest." She glanced at Sylva, awe flickering in her eyes. "And her? Is she the guardian the villagers talk about?" Liam looked at Sylva, who stood silently, her amber eyes watching Elena with an unreadable expression. "She is," Liam said softly. "And if it weren't for her, I wouldn't have been able to save you." Elena nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I'll never forget this. If there's any way I can repay you, any way I can help protect this forest, I will." Sylva stepped forward, her gaze softening. She nudged Elena gently with her nose, a silent acknowledgement of her words. As the trio made their way toward the forest's edge, Elena leaned heavily on Liam, her steps unsteady but growing stronger with each passing moment. Despite the pain etched on her face, her eyes sparkled with gratitude. The forest, which had once seemed like an unyielding labyrinth to her, now felt almost comforting under Sylva's watchful presence. The lynx moved ahead of them, her silver fur glinting faintly in the fading sunlight, as if she were part of the forest itself. "I've never seen anything like her," Elena murmured, her voice tinged with awe. "She's more than a guardian," Liam replied, his own voice quiet with reverence. "She's the heart of this place." The air around them seemed alive, filled with the hum of nature and harmony. Liam noticed how even the most tangled underbrush parted for Sylva, as though acknowledging her authority. The path she led them on was unlike any Liam had traveled before, hidden yet purposeful, marked by subtle signs only Sylva could interpret. As they neared the forest's edge, the distant lights of the village came into view, flickering like stars against the twilight. Sylva paused, turning her glowing amber eyes toward Elena. For a moment, the two shared an unspoken connection, a silent exchange of gratitude and understanding. Elena managed a small, tremulous smile, tears glistening in her eyes. "She's more than I ever imagined," Elena said softly. "Thank you for everything." When they finally emerged from the woods, the village erupted in gasps and cheers. A small group of villagers had gathered, lanterns in hand, their faces etched with worry and hope. The sight of Liam supporting Elena brought audible cries of relief. A woman rushed forward, tears streaming down her face as she embraced Elena. "Elena, we thought we'd lost you!" The woman sobbed, her arms tightly wrapped around her daughter. "She's safe now," Liam said, stepping back to give them space. "Thanks to Sylva." The villagers looked toward the forest in silent reverence, their eyes scanning the darkened tree line for a glimpse of the legendary guardian. But Sylva had already vanished, her task complete. Elena, still leaning on her mother, turned to Liam. "I'll never forget this," she said. "You and her, you saved me." "It wasn't just me," Liam replied with a smile. "Sylva is the true hero." The days that followed were filled with joy and celebration. Elena, now fully recovered, became a storyteller in her own right, sharing the tale of Sylva with anyone who would listen. Her story inspired a newfound respect for the forest among the villagers, who began to see it not as a place of fear but of wonder and magic. As for Liam, his life was forever changed. He dedicated himself to exploring the evergreen woods, not just as an adventurer, but as its protector. Though he never saw Sylva again, he often felt her presence, a flicker of movement in the shadows, the soft rustle of leaves when no wind stirred, or the glint of silver fur disappearing into the depths of the forest. Years later, Liam stood at the edge of the woods with a group of eager children gathered around him. He told them the story of Sylva and Elena, his voice filled with passion and awe. The children listened with wide eyes, their imaginations ablaze with visions of the legendary lynx. And on quiet nights, when the village lay still and the moonlight bathed the forest in silver, some swore they could see Sylva perched on a high ridge, her amber eyes glowing as she watched over the land she had sworn to protect. The villagers and the forest coexisted in harmony, each respecting the other's place in the world. And Liam, now a guardian in his own right, found peace in the knowledge that he was part of something greater, a legacy of magic, bravery, and the enduring bond between humanity and nature.